Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziel.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Joining me today is Frank Storace, and he is the producer and co-founder of the Nuts and Bolts comedy troupe. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you. Thank you for having me a few weeks ago. I started my adventure back into, being on stage, and you were definitely a component in that. So brought us to this interview, but I do want to give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself, talk a little bit about Nuts and Bolts and what you do and kind of how that came to be. So why don't we start with that? Who is Frank?
Frank is a native Rochesterian who went off to pursue a career in college of theater and decided to come home and use that knowledge to start Nuts and Bolts Comedy Improv. Just an average guy who does comedy.
Just an average guy who does comedy.
Well,
I think you're a little more than that. But like what like I know you said there was a very short synopsis of your career, I guess. So like how did Nuts and Bolts get founded?
Nuts and Bolts started, well, I'll go back a little bit further. I studied theater at SUNY New Paltz. And when I was there, I took an improv class and fell in love with it. And then that led to me being in various troupes, student troupes, summer stock troupes, things like that. Then I left school and I came back to Rochester to take care of my mother who was sick at the time. And I decided there was nothing in Rochester going on. There was no, that I knew of, there was no improv. It was all, regular theater. So I decided to make my own fun. And I was talking to my buddy, Mike Mahern, who co-founded the troupe with me, who I grew up with, and we've always been joking around and been interested in comedy and funny together and always coming up with stuff. So I said, hey, I studied improv for a while, did a lot of improv in college. I could teach you guys, you and some other people to do the troupe. And it's kind of happened. I think we were at the Bug Jar in Rochester watching a band, and it was in between the gigs. And I said, hey, man, I have this idea. We should start an improv troupe. Because at the time I actually was in a show called Let's Kill the Boss, which was like a dinner theater show from the people who brought you Joey Maria's Comedy Wedding. And I was doing that, and there was talking there about doing some improv, and I said, well, I know how to do improv, and I think I'm good at it, so I'm gonna start this troupe. And I got some of those guys in there, and some of my friends from college. No, I'm sorry, from high school, and we formed the first cast of Nuts and Bolts in 1999. And our first show was like February 13th of 2000. Yeah. And we've been going strong ever since.
So very cool. The day before Valentine's Day and
Yep.
Nuts and Bolts debut, and you're kind of like the pioneers of improv comedy, bringing it to Rochester. That's really cool. So
yeah.
So where did the name come from, Nuts and Bolts?
We struggled with a name. We couldn't think of anything that we liked. My mother kept telling us to call ourselves the Crack Ups, and it just was like, no, that's not going to work. And she just kept doing that. And so finally I was actually driving, and I saw a sign that said Nuts and Bolts are here, and it had an arrow pointing into a garage, an auto garage. And I said, that'd be a fun name for a troupe, Nuts and Bolts. So I just said, I talked to Mike. I said, hey, we should call ourselves Nuts and Bolts. He's like, okay, that'll be our working title until we can think of something better. 23 years later, we still haven't thought of anything better, nor do we need to.
Yeah.
So
no, it would kind of be funny though if like tomorrow he calls you up. I thought I have a better name.
Yeah. Yeah. For someone who's not in the troupe anymore, he does give me a lot of notes. But it comes from a good place. So
Well, it's always great to have, critics and friends and people that kind of come in and kind of tell you what you need to hear sometimes, right?
yeah, 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 it
So
does. It helps mold the show.
yeah, for sure. So like where, okay, so let's talk about like where and kind of when these things happen currently. So like nuts and bolts, where can people catch your shows?
We're at the Comedy at the Carlson in Rochester. We try to perform the third Saturday of every month in the Rickles Room. Comedy at the Carlson's got a really cool setup. They got a main room where all the headliners are, and then they have a side room which is a little bit smaller called the Rickles Room, and that's where people like Nuts and Bolts and other groups can perform. And we've been there for a while. We've become the official house troupe of Nuts of the Comedy at the Carlson. So anytime there's anything improv related or somebody requests some improv, we're the people that take care of it and do it. And no other improv troupe besides something that we sponsor can be a can play there.
Okay. That's really cool. To be the one and only of anything anywhere is something awesome, right? So
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
how did that I guess that just built over time, that relationship, or was there a significant turning point where that became a thing, or
Well, at the club,
yeah.
we were known as the troupe that performed in every venue that was available in Rochester.
Mhm.
We started at Johnny's Irish Pub, which at the time was called Johnny's Smoke Free Irish Pub, and this is before they banned smoking in all the bars. And we performed there. We used to do the show every week on a
Mhm.
Wednesday night, and till for a couple years we did it every week, and then we just got tired. We're like, let's see if we can do this every month because every week's starting to get to us. Plus,
Right.
we all started getting it at the time we were in our early to mid 20s, so we could stay up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, go to sleep, and still go to work the next morning without any problem. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're a
No,
little
been there. Used to been
we're
there.
we're we're a little bit older now, so we don't do that, but we do it once a month. And we found that we got a better audience draw once a month. We performed at the German House, and we were in residence at the Downstairs Cabaret for the longest time, for quite a few years. And then we moved over to a guy named La Torello, opened up a place called The Space, which was for just improv. Because during this time, all these other improv troupes started to form and started to
Mhm.
blossom and pop up everywhere. So this guy Law had an idea. Why don't we have a home for it all? So we decided, hey, let's give it a shot. So we became a featured act at the Space for a while. We did some shows at Rappa on their stage when they were open, when they were open, not open anymore. And then we did the show at Mark Ippolito, who's the one of the owners of the comedy club of the Carlson, was involved with the comedy club in Webster. It was actually called the Comedy Club.
Mhm.
And what had happened was we performed there. We performed on Sunday nights at 7:30 in Webster, and it was kind of tough to get an audience because it was the summertime, and the only reason why you go to Webster on a Sunday night is to either go to the movies or go to the lake.
Yep.
And people, um, so we kind of did a few shows there. Didn't work out like we planned, so we kind of parted ways. Friendly, it was all friendly, very just like we said, this isn't working. So we bounced around a little bit more, and then when Mark Ippolito opened up Comedy at the Carlson and opened up the Rickles Room, he told one of his employees told one of my cast members, Derek, about this Rickles Room. So we went to look at it, and Mark was like, "All right, so when do you guys want to start performing here again?" So we're like, "Okay." And he was a fan. He had been a fan of ours for a while, and come to find out, we realized that we went to high school together. He was a year ahead of me,
Mhm.
but we went to high school together. So it was kind of like, hey, do your old high school chum a solid, and put us in the Rickles Room. So it's been a long thing, but I think we're finally home. I mean, as being the house troupe, and I think that we're very happy to be there, and they've been very accommodating
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah, I would think so. Having some experience now there, it's a great place, family oriented kind of place. Everybody really, has everybody's back, which is part of
Yes.
like being in an improv group. And I think that's what I'd love to get to next is kind of like, how does one start an improv group? I know that there are other areas and regions that that this would be a great platform for, and what's some advice to getting a troupe started? You kind of touched on it a little
Um,
bit.
well, I would say getting a troupe started, you probably would first, want to maybe take a class in improv. People say, "Oh, I'm naturally funny. I can do improv." Uh, Probably you could, but it's always good to take a class because, as you know, taking our class that we just
Yeah.
offered, which you did phenomenal in, by the way, I must say.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you.
we, there's skills that you need to hone in on, and just grab some friends who are interested, and just take a class together, or if you take a class, then teach it to your friends or your other actors, because improv is not just comedy; it's also used in theater, and improv is part of theater. So I'm not, there's no separation, but um, take your, take your skills and just do it. Don't be afraid to go to an open mic night with a group of friends and do some improv games. Call
Yeah.
yourself some clever name like the Crack Ups or something. I don't know.
Just ask your mom.
That's my mom. She's a
Right.
comedic, the comedic genius.
The comedic
So
genius behind naming troops. Right,
yeah.
mom. So awesome. Yeah, and thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot coming from you to hear that I did a decent job up on stage. It was great.
Yeah,
It's like
very good.
honestly, my last experience on stage was high school because I went to a college that was known for its drama and its acting and its music, and in Fredonia, and
Yeah,
I didn't really have those that many experiences there on stage at all because of the talent that I was up against. So,
yeah.
but it really was great, and the class was awesome. Highly recommend it to anybody in the Rochester area that's thinking about doing improv, or just getting out there and socializing. It was like, now I don't know what to do on Thursdays. That the group has been emailing. We're like, what do we do? I've got no social life. So it provides a lot of that, and some people that I think are going to be really close friends from here on out. So
I hope so. I hope so. That's important in any troupe that you're with, is to be friends. It's put all the drama outside when you walk into a rehearsal, a practice, or whatever you want to call it, and or a class, and just be friends and just have fun and trust.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because the laughter and the humor comes, like, from the wittiness and from the friends that are helping you and backing you up, and the weird random thoughts that come into their heads that they just say out loud at moments. So
Right.
and it was great getting to work with you and Mitch and others, like just learning, right? Because that was the other thing that I'll bring up about the class that I thought was great. It wasn't just like one teacher the whole time. People from nuts and bolts and came in and shared the stage with us and warmed up with us. So I think it's awesome to kind of get that different talent and the different styles in there. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, some of the games and some of the things that, you expect when you're coming to one of the nuts and bolts show.
Well, if you come to a nuts and bolts show, be prepared to laugh. Don't take your life too seriously when you come in. If you get offended by anything, we try. Okay, well, let me back up. We're PG-13. That's what I like to say. Is every once in a while you'll drop the occasional F bomb or whatever, and that happens in everyday life. I mean, it's
Yeah.
what it is. But you have to come and just like to have fun, because we like
Mm.
to have fun, and our best shows are when the audience is having fun with us. When the audience is playing along, because a lot of the show is driven by the audience.
Right.
So come with a willingness to laugh. Give suggestions. Don't be quiet, and don't be like we're breaking the fourth wall all the time.
Yeah.
The whole room is one big stage. We just happen to be elevated. You know, and just you'll come, you'll see a lot of good improv, a lot of good scene work, a lot of laughs, a lot of puns, some groaners, um, just all out good time. I mean, if you're coming for something to get your mind off of whatever's going on in your life, you know then come see nuts and bolts, because we will definitely, for that part of that hour and a half, hour and 20, whatever it is, we'll keep you laughing, and we'll keep you in a good place mentally. And then hopefully you leave and you tell your friends that you had a good time, and then you come back with them and bring them back. And we've had that. We've had people over the years who've seen us back when we started and then ran into us, now and are like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys are still doing this. And I can't believe that, it's still so much fun. And it's like, well, we try to, at least I try to make it. I mean, you paid, you know,
Yeah.
I got to dance. I got to dance. I got to be a dancing monkey.
Dance flipping monkey. Yeah, no, I totally think that's completely true. And I haven't had the pleasure of seeing a full out show from Nuts and Bolts yet, but I've had the sneak previews and I can't wait. It just so happens the show that I could have gone to, we had a conflict. I believe it was the same night as my daughter's performing in theater. So but I'm looking forward to the next one. And why don't you just plug that next show right now while we're kind of talking about it's coming up in May, right?
Yeah, May 20th at 8 o'clock at Comedy at the Carlson. Tickets are on sale at carlsoncomedy.com. You can go there. There's a whole calendar. Check out what they got going on. Check out what other shows they have. But buy ours first.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then,
got to check that out first. Got to go to the best.
And then, yes, exactly. Right. And it's 8 o'clock. It's a Saturday night. There's a full bar. There's a menu. You can order some, bar type foods like nachos and the flatbread pizzas and the big pretzel on a meat hook. I still don't understand why it's on a meat hook, but whatever.
To be funny, I don't know. So you can, when you're in the middle of acting, can take a big bite out of it and just.
Yeah, I get upstaged by a carb. So.
Could be worse.
Yeah,
it's a great little area too of Rochester that's really coming back. There's a lot of different restaurants and things like that. So I've seen a bunch of people kind of get some food, but then get more food and drinks at the comedy at the Carlson. Catch your show. Yeah, definitely. See Frank's Nuts and Bolts first, right? So very cool. So, we talked a little bit about where Nuts and Bolts came from. We talked a little bit about the class. We talked a little bit about the history. What about the future? Where do you see Nuts and Bolts going? What's in the ideal comedy world? What do you see yourselves doing?
I think that I would like to see Nuts and Bolts continue for years and years and years after I'm done with it. Someone else take the reins and just keep it going. I want it to be a Rochester institution, which I think it is at this point. And just keep going, doing some good improv, whether it be at the Comedy at the Carlson or somewhere else. Just keep the spirit alive. I'm not going to say, I want to take the show to Broadway. I want to take the show here. I'm being realistic. I would like to see the show continue. And if we go national, awesome. If we don't, that's still awesome. And teaching and getting more people involved in improv in a friendly atmosphere, and a non-competitive atmosphere. That's just all about trust and all the warm fuzzies and love and all that.
No, I think that's a great aspiration to have, and I think you will see that through for sure. You're well on your way, and like I said, it's a family, a bunch of. I'm maybe a dysfunctional one, but we all are, right?
Of course.
brothers and sisters razzing on each other, and I think it's terrific. So, part of the reason I wanted to have you on the show was, the nuts and bolts of everything that you do is about helping our community come together. You hear that old expression or that old adage of healing through laughter, right? Because laughter is such a powerful medicine. And I laugh every time that I'm with you guys, and I know that will help a lot of people have maybe you're having a really bad day at work or whatever, but you have that Nuts and Bolts comedy evening coming up on that Saturday, and you're like, I will let loose.
Yes.
Right. So
yes, yeah.
But there's no question in there, Frank. Sorry. Here's the question. So what you talked a little again about what the future holds for Nuts and Bolts. Can you tell us a little bit more about the class and how that fits into Nuts and Bolts, and kind of where that came from too?
The class was a brainchild of our director, Mitch Wissick. I've always thought about teaching classes, but I never had the right facility for it. And Mark Ippolito at the club approached us and said, they have interest about the class. And we've gotten interest over the past. And normally it would be, well, if you want to take a class, just come to one of our rehearsals and we can workshop. And we've actually gotten some members of the troupe that way, because they said that they were interested in comedy and wanted to learn more. Can they come and sit in? And they sat in and kept sitting in and sitting in. And I was like, well, get up on stage. If you're just going to sit there, get up here and let's play. And then they become a key member of the troupe. But this class started out as an experiment to see if we could start to build a community of improvers in Rochester, and improvisers. I'm sorry, whatever.
It's okay.
Yeah,
just improvise.
Cut that out. Cut that out.
Yeah, we'll edit that and post up.
So the class was more to see, and we got just a smorgasbord of people. As you know, I mean, there were different types of people in the troupe, and all of them, with the exception of a couple, were a little bit older, like more adults than kids. They weren't the 21-year-old. I'm funny when I'm drunk. I'm going to be there and get drunk and funny. No, there was just a nice cross section of people that were there from all different types of backgrounds, and that's what we're about. Nuts and bolts. We're trying to bring it all together and create a scene. Well, there's a scene. I mean, there's a big scene in Rochester now, and I'm very happy that there is. And we can learn from each other, and we've all come together on a bunch of stuff. But our classes are more for beginners, people who said, well, maybe I'll try it, maybe I'll give it a shot, and that's what we like to do.
Yeah, I mean, I urge all my audience members to kind of reach out to Frank and try to figure out, to take the class, honestly, because even if you are the most, closed-in introvert or the most largest extrovert, there's a place for you in this group. I witnessed it in the group that I was in, the class that I was in, because it takes really all sorts of personalities, and kind of reminded me, and I'd love for your opinion on like the difference between a comedian and an improv person. I'd love to hear that. But before you kind of explain the difference, I had this woman that I worked with at another job I was at, and she was so dry and to herself and quiet. And one day she just like out of the blue said, I'm competing in a comedy contest, and can you guys come and support me? And we're like, wait, what? And she was like the funniest person in the freaking world. She was talking about her nephew and like how bad of a ball player he was, and all this stuff like we never knew. And we're laughing off, like crazy. And then at the end of the show, we go in and talk to her, and it's like, oh God, I got to meet this nephew. She's like, I don't have a nephew. She made it all up. So I'm like, that's freaking awesome.
Yes.
So going back to the question, Frank, like I know there's differences, but for the audience, like what is the difference between a stand-up comedian or even a sketch comedy and improv? Because I'm not sure everybody knows.
Right. When I tell people that I do comedy, they're like, oh, well, tell me some jokes. It's like, well, it's a little bit, and I feel like a jerk when I say, well, I do improv comedy. I don't do stand up. I do improv. And people are like, oh, no, that's not what I mean. A stand-up improver, improviser, a stand-up comedian relies on themselves for the comedy. There's written material, there's jokes that they've worked out. It's very hard. It's a very difficult craft to master, and I applaud and adore those that can do it. Then the sketch comedy is sort of like improv, because a lot of like Second City and a lot of in the Groundlings and people like that, groups like that who are national, a lot of Hollywood stars come from those places.
Yeah.
A lot of their scenes came up through improv. Like they just do an improv game or they do some improvisation, and that brings out the sketch, and they develop the characters and flesh it out. That's more of a fleshed out sketch. Like Saturday Night Live is a lot of it's, they do a lot of improv, in their whatever, and they flesh it out into a sketch. And then improv is audience participation. You make the audience there's different parameters each game. You have different games. and each person or each game has its different rules, and you have to follow those rules. But within those rules, the content is made up on the spot.
Mhm.
Um, that's where the trust comes in. You have to trust your partner in your scene to have your back. So not someone, you don't want someone who's going to let you die on stage. You want someone who's going to help you get to that next level and take, because you got to, by making your scene partner look good, you look good because the
Right.
scene looks good.
Yeah.
And like I said, in improv is audience suggestions. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you wrote that." No, it's all, and that's where all the training comes in. The yes and, you never want to say
Yeah.
no in an improv scene because it cuts the opportunities right off. You always want to, be present and be just there for your partner and be there for the audience.
Yeah.
So I think I explained that well. I don't
No,
know.
you did. You definitely did. No, that was horrible. You should not do this anymore. No, I think you did that really well, and I learned that lesson. In like the second week about the yes and, even though I thought I was doing it and I was in character and I was doing the little voice and of this little boy, and my co-actors said, I'm your mom, and I'm like, no, you're not, stranger danger, and it
Yeah.
totally killed the mood. And I think I even did it twice. So learning that lesson, the yes and going along and not forcing it makes it funnier.
Yeah.
um for sure. So because like you can sense that like dead air, and then like you kind of put your person on their toes, and like, what am I going to say now? I'm not their mom, who am I? Right.
Yeah.
So so I think that you explained that really well. And the big thing is the audience participation. I love that, the interaction, people like performing in front of a live audience, but it's even better when that audience is also sort of part of the show and influencing what you're doing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's great to see the audience really get into it. That's what, because we feed off your energy. So if you're just going to sit there and not say anything, we're going to be like, you paid for an improv show. That's okay. We'll try, and we'll do it. We'll do what we
Yeah.
got to do. We're doing improv.
Can
Well,
you
it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Can you tell us a little bit, maybe a story about an audience member that was just sort of over the top, and anything funny that happened that you never saw before?
Well, we get a lot of one of the guys in the troupe, Tito, who's a great who came to us with no experience, and is we've taught him the tools, and he's actually taking it and really taking it seriously, and become one of the become a really good performer. Um, he brings a lot of his friends, and they will constantly shout out the same um, suggestion over and over and over and over and over again, and we don't take it because it's inappropriate, and we
Yeah.
don't want, and we're better than that, and so we get that a lot. We actually had a couple walk out, were offended by something that one of the other improvisers said, but
Mhm.
blamed it on me.
Oh.
I was like, I wasn't even in that scene. Like, what? you know, but
That
for
Frank
the
is
most,
horrible.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
But
show
for
would
the
have been
most
great.
part, the show would have been great without that Frank guy.
Yeah.
Uh, um, but no, I mean, we really haven't had a lot of stuff that I haven't seen before. Over the past 23 years we've been doing it, I, I've seen it all. I've seen audience members who sit there and, can't wait to get up on stage and keep volunteering. Um, and those who sit there and don't do anything and just make faces. It was funny little story is that we were doing a show, and there was a family in front of us, and this girl just sat there like this the whole time, didn't laugh, didn't do anything, and we were like, "What's going on with this girl?" So we started making fun of it, and it's still, making fun of it in a nice way. We weren't like, "Oh,
Right.
hey, laugh, you dumb," you know. we and we were joking about it, and come to find out it was Henry's sister. Henry was in the troupe, but it was his sister, and she's like that all the time. I guess she's just an angry girl.
My brother's not
And
funny.
yeah, and she wouldn't let, and we were making fun of her, and he goes, "Yeah, that family, that was," and he was still relatively new. so he didn't know his family yet. And he's like, yeah, that was my family. That was my sister. And we're like, really? We thought he was joking. He's like, no, that was really my sister. And it's like, oh, yeah.
Did he stay with the troupe? Oh man. So yeah, I again love the audience and interaction. And one of the things that you made me think about was during our show, the scene laundromat kept on getting repeated like constantly. Yep. And so of course, like me being, sarcastic guy that I am, I had to throw it into scenes that were, I think Mitch finally said, yeah, let's into the laundromat,
Yeah.
and there's like a tornado coming, and my
Yep.
colleague screams, and I go, what is it, a laundromat?
Yeah.
So and then throwing it in other scenes. Hey, laundry detergent. You guys need laundry? Yeah. So it became a running gag.
Yeah.
So here I am on my own show, laughing at my own jokes when it's supposed to be about you. So there you go. But that, I think, what you do is so much fun, and I just really think that people should, at the very least, come to see your show just to experience that. And then I think that the next step is check out the class and try it for yourself, because really in life I heard this just the other day from someone else who happens to be an improver. So improv has been like invading my life over the last couple of weeks. And she said that, we're really honestly in everyday situations improving through everything. You're doing it anyway. There's no script. You don't go to work with a script unless you're a paid actor.
Right.
So, but I really do applaud what you do, because
thank you.
I know it's not your main job, but it's such a cool job to have and to be a part of. So
it keeps me sane at my real job.
Right.
So, which is funny, which I've been told at work that, like they can't believe, like you were saying earlier about your friend who, was very quiet and just whatever. When I'm at work, I'm working, so I'm not joking around. Yeah, I do a little bit, make jokes here and there, but people are like, I can't believe you do comedy. I mean, you don't seem like the type of guy that would do it. I'm like, if I did my shtick at work, I'd be fired.
Right.
Like I would, if I was that energetic and that on all the time, A, you would hate me because I was so annoying. And B, HR would be, I would have constantly be in HR's office about saying something I shouldn't have or something, or, so people are like, oh,
yeah.
I had a coworker that came to the show. This is years ago. She came to the show. She goes, it was so funny. I was so surprised because it's you.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a backhanded compliment, I guess. Thanks.
Yeah, it's you.
That's great. Thank you. I was like, I don't know how to take that, but
that was going to be my question. Have you had coworkers come to the show, or other people from walks of life, and what's their reaction?
A lot of people at work, at my present job, a few people have come. One was going to take the class, but she chickened out at the last minute. After seeing the show, she said, I can't do that. There's no way. I said, take the class. She's like, I can't, no way. And I was like, well, whatever. But work coworkers have come. I had one coworker just sat there in shock, just like, wow, I've never seen this before, and this is amazing. And I know somebody who does this. This is great. So it's cool, and they've been supportive. I have a friend, a guy I work with, Gary, who comes pretty much to every show. And he always brings his wife and brings, some friends, random friends of his. Another good friend of mine at work, Savas, who does the same thing. He brings other people, and they're like, so people, hey, Frank, I saw your show. And I'm like, oh, hey. People I don't know at work are like, hey, Frank. I'm like, hey. So,
You're becoming well known.
I guess.
Frank, the improver. So very cool. So is there anything we haven't, like, this is a part of the show where I usually ask the question, is there anything I haven't talked about that you definitely want to touch base on, and kind of why you're thinking about that? I'm going to ask you a couple other, maybe personal questions, not too personal. But so one of those questions is, who is someone that like inspires you?
Someone who inspires me is not one person in particular. It's just anyone who is not afraid to let their freak flag fly. Someone who's doing what they love, doing it for themselves, and not giving a crap what everyone else thinks about. That's very inspiring to me.
That's great. That's a terrific person to have.
Not
a lot of people can do that. Yeah,
no, and I struggle with all of that. So I hopefully am,
sure.
not somebody's inspiration.
All right. So growing up, like what did you want to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to entertain when I was growing up. I grew up in a theater family. My mother was a stage manager. My father was involved in plays and stuff around Rochester and things. And my sister's a choreographer and a teacher. And so we come from a very theatrical family. So I always wanted to perform. I had aspirations to go to New York or LA and become like this great actor and win, the Oscar and the Tonys and all that. But then as I got older, you realize that, oh wait, I got to move to LA. It's not just going to come to my. It's not going to come. So I'm still doing what I wanted to do. I'm still entertaining. I'm still making people laugh and you know um, getting fulfillment out of it. So yeah. So I wanted to I wanted to be an entertainer.
Yeah. No, I think you are very entertaining, and I'm not just saying
Thank you.
that. I really enjoy just knowing you and talking to you. And honestly, like I said in the show earlier, I'm really looking forward to seeing a full out show. Because if you're even a quarter as funny as you are, like when we're all like, just talking, it's gonna be phenomenal. So, and I've heard awesome things from the other cast members that have had the opportunity to see you guys. So
Oh, good. Thank you.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's swing back to that question. Is there anything else that you want to share about nuts and bolts or uh anything at all that we haven't
Um,
touched on?
there's only two original members left in the troupe. Everyone else is over the years has come and gone. Me and another improviser, friend of mine, Scott, who had been in the troupe since the very beginning. Obviously, I started it, so of course I've had, and I have, um, and Scott has been there through the thick and the thin, and we have a revolving cast. Every couple of years we get new people. It's like SNL.
Yeah.
They kind of reblend. And I think that's the secret of us being successful, nuts and bolts being successful over the past 23 years is because I haven't said, oh, well, the original cast is over. I'm going to cancel it. We're not going to do it anymore. No, it's an evolving, I mean, Henry, who is, the youngest of the troupe, he was a baby when we started,
Mhm.
so it was kind of cool. Like I said, your parents probably got a babysitter to come see a nuts and bolts show. And here you are, you know, but yeah, and I just think, there's other groups in town. I wish them all well. There's no, at least on our end, there's no animosity. There's no, competition. I mean,
Mhm.
we're all doing the same thing, and let's support comedy, whether it's us or if it's another group. Um, just support improv because it's very
Yeah.
important.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And it sounds like you have the makings of a reunion tour or reunion show that could happen at any moment too, bringing back some
Uh,
original cast members, or maybe not.
well, for a while there, I did have Mike and another friend of mine, Jesse, came back, and they were the original cast. So it was really great to see me, Scott, Jesse, and Mike from the original cast doing a game together. It was like the old guard is back. We're like, let us show you how it's done, kind of thing. But then after COVID hit, Mike and Jesse kind of had some stuff going on, so they decided to just kind of hang out and not just sit in the audience and watch.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's
So
good too.
yeah, oh yeah,
'Cause
it's great.
sometimes throwing out the suggestions is the funnest part.
Yeah.
Well, Frank, I really appreciate you coming on the show, sharing a little bit about nuts and bolts and comedy. I really do envy a lot of what you do. I'm glad to have played a little part in it so far, and I'm hoping to kind of continue. Because I think it was a great outlet. It reminded me of my theater days. Um, and I just can't stress enough to the audience that you need to come out to a nuts and bolts show. You need to experience this. And if you're not in Rochester, you need to find an improv group to go and experience, because it really is so much more than like whose line is it anyway live. Because like you are in the show, you're part of the show. So Frank, thank you for being on our show and
You're
sharing
welcome. It was
everything.
a pleasure. It
Yeah.
was great. My pleasure.
So I'm Nick Cozio, the host of That Sounds Terrific, and joining me again today is Frank from Nuts and Bolts. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.